Watchdogs are out in force, pleading essentially with the American media not to carry Donald Trump's propaganda spree on January 6th, when he's going to try to disrupt the whatever other coverage there may be. He's going to try and hijack it. He's going to try and spread more lies. Angelo Caruso, the guy who runs Media Matters for America, MediaMatters.org, which is just a really vital website these days, is talking about this, and among others. And this is Angelo Caruso. He said, Donald Trump's January 6th press event should be recognized for what it is, an opportunity for Trump to lie, to downplay the violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, and set up his 2024 presidential campaign. And, he notes that Trump lies every time he opens his mouth, basically. But I think it goes beyond this. New York University journalism professor Jay Rosen publishes a blog called Press Think, which is, widely read among people in the media. And in a Sunday tweet, he reached out to people in the media and said, newsworthiness, which is the rubric, this is the term that the media justifies putting Donald Trump on the air with, right? Even though we all heard, the president of ABC News back in, 2015, 2016, say, Donald Trump may be terrible for America, but, it's great for ABC. So, keep at it, Donald Trump, right? So anyhow, this is Rosen. He says, newsworthiness is an incoherent grab bag of factors that does not take into account the damage that a demagogue can do to the public sphere or the truth value of an event. And this particular speaker, that would be Donald Trump, can be good at producing lurid spectacle. Which takes us back to my old rant that, the state of our news today is the consequence of three things. The reason why we don't even have, good, solid reporting, and the reason why Donald Trump may well get away with promoting far more obscene and aggressive lies on January 6th. Number one, of course, Ronald Reagan ending the Fairness Doctrine in 1987. Number two, Bill Clinton signing the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that allowed radio and television and newspapers to form into giant monopolies rather than having local control, and to cross-own each other, kind of paving the way for Sinclair and Fox and what used to be called Cumulus and what used to be called Clear Channel, all with lots and lots and lots of right-wing programming. And number three, the writers' strike, and I think this was in '98. I may be wrong on the year, but sometime in the late '90s, it was, as I recall, during the Clinton presidency. And correct me if I'm wrong. I genuinely don't remember the year, but just the era. But the writers in Hollywood went on strike, and the television company, the television production companies, and the television networks still needed stuff to put on the air, and so they started programming what they called reality shows, because the reality shows didn't need a writer. And the directors weren't on strike, the producers weren't on strike, the talent wasn't on strike, it was just the writers. So, hey, how can we do television without writers? Be easy, do a reality show. And so suddenly, television started this thing of, hey, let's follow average people around. And you had the dating reality shows, and you had the having fights reality shows, and kind of Jerry Springer kind of stuff morphed into mainstream and primetime television during that period. And what those reality shows did is they set a whole brand new standard for television journalism, which didn't exist before. Prior to the writers' strike, when you watched the news on TV at night, occasionally the news anchor who was saying, okay, there's, 17 stories, big stories today, and in our 30 minutes, we're going to cover them one at a day, and they just, 2 minutes per story, they just go right through them all. And occasionally they would hand it off to some, and our correspondent in Baghdad has this to say, Ralph, what's going on in Baghdad? And Ralph would say, well, here's what's happening, and then they come back. But that was it. But now we've got reality television, which is where the host will, look into the camera and say, okay, here's what's going on. And now let's have a panel of 3 people on who are going to tell us what they think about this. That's reality TV. It doesn't require writers. It doesn't, if all the producer has to do is get the talent, is to get the people on the air. It's super simple to produce. And it, in my opinion, it contributes to the dumbing down of America. And this is what, Rosen is talking about is, the media seems to be going for easy, cheap, high stickiness, sensationalism value. But they don't care about the news content. They don't care about the context. They don't care about the impact that this has on democracy. When Les Moonves was saying, hey, yeah, Donald Trump, keep going, he came right out and said, this is terrible for America, as I said a moment ago. He came right out and said it. But, hey, it's making money for our television network. This was, Trump has been lying about this 2 days after the election in November of last year, or of 2020, year before last. It's 2022 now. 2 days after the election, they still hadn't officially called the race because it was, or they were just kind of on the edge of it. And Trump was lying. He made a live speech that all the networks carried, where he said, we actually won the election, and there was voter fraud all over the place, and the networks cut away from him in the middle of his speech because he was telling so many lies. I mean, that's a pretty low bar, actually. But, he also told those same lies in his January 6th speech. And now he's issued this press release. He's saying, he's calling it the Unselect Committee of highly partisan political hacks. And he touts the fact that he's going to have a news conference, not a press conference, a news conference on January 6th at Mar-a-Lago, right? And then he adds, and this should tell us all exactly what he's going to be talking about. And the media, in my opinion, is doing a terrible job of covering this. Then he adds, and I'm quoting from Donald Trump here as much as I am loath to do so. He says, until then, remember, the insurrection took place on November 3rd. It was the completely unarmed protest of the rigged election that took place on January 6th. Now think about that for a minute. This is a naked attempt to completely rewrite history. He's trying to do this both in the short term, both to say, we need to rewrite history right now so that Donald Trump is saying so that he's no longer characterized as the bad guy, as the inciter of a riot, as the man who led a mob or inspired a mob to go try to assassinate the vice president and the Speaker of the House and tear down a democracy. But he's also trying to alter history for posterity. He's trying to change the narrative. And it's working, by the way, at least with Republican voters. You've got a third of Republican voters saying that violence is fine with them. You've got more than half of Republican voters saying, yeah, Trump actually won the election that he lost. There was an NPR Ipsos poll that was released yesterday afternoon. And it showed that both Democrats, independents, and Republicans, in all 3 cases, more than 50%, believe that the United States democracy, that our system of government itself, quote, is in crisis and at risk of failing. This didn't just come out of nowhere. This is the consequence of 40 years of Reaganism and neoliberalism gutting the American middle class, and the Republican Party adopting, back in 1968, Richard Nixon's Southern strategy of trying to racialize every election and pandering to white supremacists. And Donald Trump was just saying out loud what Ronald Reagan, what Richard Nixon, what George Herbert Walker Bush, well, he, with his Willie Horton ads, he went a little beyond, just kind of saying it by dog whistle. But typically, and George W. Bush, what these Republican politicians have historically done is promoted this kind of stuff by dog whistle, by implication. Trump just came right out and said it. And so now fewer than half of the Republicans in the United States, this was also from that NBC or the Ipsos poll that was released yesterday, the NPR Ipsos poll. More than half of Republicans are saying, no, the election was not decided correctly, that they're not accepting the results. This is nuts.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And if the media gives him another free ride and another $1 billion worth of publicity, we are in for a really tough time.